Okay, so Excel has a lot of different number of different lookup functions. So we this session this Sunday we will be doing a session on uh, this VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. So Excel has a number of different lookup functions here. We will be talking specifically about the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP function. Also, we will be covering in upcoming chapters the uh, match, the index, and several others. What a common item is in all of them is they need to refer to an external table, or you can call them an array. So without getting into details of all those functions, and now without getting into the details of all those functions that I mentioned, the lookup functions, the index, the match, and a few others, notice on this sheet here called lookups. This is in our file lookup and reference functions here. Now we see two lists here. The list number one here, which is highlighted in the cream background, and the other one over here, which is also highlighted in the cream background. Now, which one is easier to read? Both of these sheets contains the same data. Both of these sheets contains the same data. Now, which one is easier to read? Now, whenever anyone is confronted with this question, is would say that the list in column G and H is far more easier to read than in row 2 and 3. So, and we will see that later. The vertical list is always easier to read rather than the horizontal list. It is much easier to read. So what are we looking out here? Over here, we have some Aadhaar numbers, we have some employee names, job ratings, and their compensation. So by the way of their Aadhaar numbers and compensation, we want to identify how much compensation, how much is the tax rate. We want to find out their tax rate depending upon how much compensation you are getting. How much compensation you're getting, based on that you'll have a tax rate. So but the way that we lay out our data is very important, and if we have to do this kind of a data, of course the vertical list is much preferred by a lot of people. Over here we got the same data, and this is horizontally laid out. So which list is easier to read? Of course, the way that we laid out our data is far more important. And the whole idea behind the lookup function is based on what we see on the left, which is the compensation, and we get the data from the right. In this case, we want to get the tax rate, or what we see at the above, and we want to get the data at the bottom. Now we can pull up the information from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right. Also, the layout is very important. Why I'm taking too much time and stress on this one? Because over here we have these compensations here, and these are kind of a slabs. So if you have a compensation of maybe 1,09,518, you should be taxed somewhere around 5.5%. And this should be sorted ascendingly, smallest to largest. And this is very important, specifically when you have such kind of a data. And over here, smallest to largest. And lookup function is designed in such a way, the VLOOKUP approximate match. Now VLOOKUP has a couple of functions here. Now let's say we are talking about these lookup functions, and within those lookup we have these VLOOKUP, and then we have HLOOKUP, and then we have XLOOKUP, and then we have several others, switch, index, match, and whatnot. So let me remove this. So in the approximate match, that for the vertical lookup function is designed in such a way to give you the previous lower value always. It is designed to give you the previous lower value. So for example, if your compensation is 1,09,518, it will be taxed, it will fall under the previous lower value, not the next higher. It won't go up to 6%, it will go back to 5.5%, the previous lower figure. And this is how the vertical lookup function is designed, and we will be looking up the data vertically. So it is called as VLOOKUP function, right? So, and one more important thing here to note that these compensations, we don't have these exact values. We don't have these exact values. We have, what we have here is the approximate match. These are the slabs. Now, if we want to find those compensation exactly, we won't be able to do that because we don't have an exact match here. So this is how you would know that whether you need an approximate match or an exact match. So so we need to find those compensations here, and these compensations are found as an approximate match. Over here we have the similar kind of compensation, similar kind of list built up in an horizontal way. So this is, if we want to match the compensation with this list, we will be using an HLOOKUP function. But most of the time, VLOOKUP is far more used because uh, this is much more preferred. Because of the layout of the data, how the data is laid out. So let's dive deep into the this function, and let's get into this. So over here we have this text rate. We want to calculate the text rate. So we'll be using a VLOOKUP function here. So we'll start with VLOOKUP, and I'm going to make this column wider because and making zooming in it so we can see this clearly. So we'll type in equal. We'll start with equal VLOOKUP. Now over here, what we're looking at, these are called parameters. So the first parameter is lookup value, and this is highlighted bold in color. So which is a bold. So whatever parameter you are on will be highlighted in bold. So we have this lookup function in bold. If I want to move to the next parameter or argument, I put a comma. Now we are on table array. Now we are on column index number. Now we are on range lookup. So comma is a separator to move from one parameter to another parameter. So the first parameter is says lookup value. What is the value that we want to look up? What is the value that we want to look up? So we are looking up the compensation. Where is the compensation? This is a compensation here. D2, comma, table array. Now, where do you want to find it? You might see the words table or array or array or list. So, which means that where do you want to find this data from? My data is want to find it from GNH, from the first column to the last column. My data is over here. Find this compensation in this column G, starting column G, and column index number. Now, which column has your answer? Now, if it were, my answer is in column H. So, if it says column name, I would have typed column H. But it says column index num. Num means number. Index means the first starting the first column that you selected. Column means because it's a vertical, so we are finding it from the column. So column index number. So column number, if it says column number, I would say A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eighth column has my answer. But it doesn't say so. It says index number. So index number starts from, we started from column G to H. So G will be the first column and H will be the second column. So my column index number will be number 2. And VLOOKUP by default, the fourth parameter is whether you want an approximate match or an exact match. Now this is optional. Why are optional? Because VLOOKUP by default, if you don't close the function, it will by default be a approximate match. So true for approximate, yes, I want an approximate match. False means exact. Now this range lookup, you would see it is in solid brackets. So which means that this is optional. You can use it, you don't want to, you can skip it. If you skip it, the default value will activate. So which means that it will be approximate match. I'm going to close this parentheses now and press enter. If my formula is right, we are going to end up seeing 5.5%. And I press enter and I get 0.0055. Of course, we need to format this into percentage, and I will go here and it says 6 because we are hiding those decimals, and over here we got this 5.5%. So over here, which matches it? And in Excel, the rule of thumb is we type formula only once and then we copy. And I double click here, we got a copy here. All this cells have the same formula. Correct answers: 55,651. It will fall before over here 3%. It is more than 55,000. So more than 55,000, unless it changes to 65,000, it will change, then switch to 3.5%. Now, similarly, like we did for VLOOKUP, pretty much easier, we can also do the HLOOKUP. Let me clear this for now. And we have the horizontal list over here. So we can start with HLOOKUP. HLOOKUP. Lookup value, again, lookup value will remain the same, D2. Table array, where do you want to have look for the answer? Of course, over here. And because I have selected the range, I've not selected all these columns. I've selected the range or not selected the rows. I'm going to make it absolute by putting dollar symbols and or F4. So this is locked. This is absolute. Now, if you don't know what is absolute, please go and watch the video on absolute. There is a 1 minute video and also there's a detailed chapter on absolute. So row index number. Now, because this is horizontal, we are looking for the rows. Vertical, we look up, it says column index number. Row means row index number. Now, which row has my answer? My answer is in third row. But index number starts from the row, the first row that I started. So, it's number 2 will be the answer. And I press enter, we get the same answer. And I can copy this down. And we got all these answers. In Excel, we type formula only once and then we copy into many cells, leftward, downward, upward, rightward. This is how this works. Now, Over here, if you notice that I've made these rows absolute. Have not done that in the column when we use the VLOOKUP. Why? Because I've selected the entire column. Now, if you have selected the entire column, you want to make sure that you don't put any numbers in there. I'm going to use the VLOOKUP again, but this time I'll select the range. So VLOOKUP, this compensation, comma, over here, I'm going to make it absolute, function F4, comma, column index number would remain the same, number 2, press enter, you'll get the same answer. And I can copy this down. What if I don't use these absolute? What will happen? I'll tend to get incorrect answers. Why? Let me show it again. Equal VLOOKUP, lookup value this one, range is this. Now I'm not using this absolute, and it will be relative reference now. Relative means if I copy this down, the references will change and I'll end up getting wrong answers. I copy this down, references will move. Over here, it is searching here. It is searching here. So in order to lock it, we are absoluting it. And I absolute it and I press enter, you'll get an answer here. So I select this and F4 or function F4 and you'll get the answer. Copy this down, you have it. So this is how VLOOKUP is actually used. Now if you have a range here, you have selected the entire range. Maybe you want to name it. I can go in the name box and I can type it name tax rate and I press enter and now this is a tax rate. I'm going to delete this function again. If we look up this value where in a tax rate, comma, index number 2, enter, we get an answer. I don't need to use the range or the lock those absolute, make those cell absolute, because for this range I have given a name tax rate and I'm using that in the formula here, and this is more easier to read. D2 tax rate 2. And remember, the layout is very much important. We can't have the tax rate here instead of column D. If I move this column D into column E and between E and F, it will not work. G into H, the layout has to be accurate. In both the cases, whether you're using a VLOOKUP or the HLOOKUP function, both of these, the layout plays an important role. Layout of the data is very important. So this is how we use the VLOOKUP function or the HLOOKUP function over here. And sometimes we want to use these approximate match or the exact match. So let's move on to this chapter here, approximate match. We have this data out here. Again, we just did the approximate match. Let's move on to the exact match. Now we are on this sheet, exact match, and sometimes we want to match the data exactly. Now if I go back to lookups here, on the far right, I have this data out here. Now look at this data here. Now over here we have these Aadhaar numbers, we have their employee name, salary, and their dependents. Now just a friendly reminder, these are random generated numbers. And we got their departments, we got Aadhaar number, hire date, years, and compensation. Now sometimes you are actually matching the data, comparing one list with another list and trying to get the data. In those cases, you need something unique to match. For example, in this case, what is the unique item we have? We have these Aadhaar numbers. So we want to match these Aadhaar numbers along with the Aadhaar numbers and get an answer. In this case, maybe the compensation over here. So we have departments here, we have Aadhaar numbers. We have Aadhaar numbers as a unique item here. So Aadhaar numbers to Aadhaar numbers we will match, and based on the other list, we can get the compensation. Now this is how we can use this one. Now, if I move to this sheet here, remember I said VLOOKUP has two functions, approximate and exact match. Now, we got a name here, we got a rate table. Of course, by looking at this data, you know what is happening here. This is converting those text ratings into numerical scores in this rate table. We have these names here and their ratings, and we want to convert this into numerical score. I've done that for you over here. I've used the VLOOKUP function, which is taking this rating and matching in this rate table. And but I'm getting 50, and 50 means fail, but fair should be what? 71. Now it is giving me a wrong answer. Why it is giving me a wrong answer? Now I'm not sure, but I'm getting a wrong answer. Now it may happen that if you have used a wrong parameter, you might end up getting a wrong answer. Now over here, we want to match these ratings exactly in this rate table. But what happened here, if you look closely, what is happening? We are matching these ratings approximate. In an approximate, the first parameter, the second parameter is correct, the third parameter. Oh, the fourth parameter is not available. The fourth parameter says whether you want to do an approximate match or an exact match. False means exact. Yes, false means exact. So you can use false or you can put 0. Now, if I use a false as an exact match, which means that I'm telling Excel that, okay, match these ratings with that rate table exactly the way it is. So you press enter, these ratings are matched exactly. And now you have these numbers here and you can copy this down. And you got all these ratings matched. Remember, a single parameter miss can get you an incorrect answer. Now you may want to use false, you may want to use 0. 0 means false, 1 mean approximate. So you can also use 0. You will still get the same answer. Now this time I've used 0. Or if you want, if I remove the parameter, the fourth parameter, I'll get a wrong answer. Or you can put, to activate the exact match, you can simply put a comma. Comma means an exact match. If you put a comma, you have, it means that it's an exact match. I press enter, you get an answer. Now you can use either false, you can use either 0, you can use as a comma. That's it. Or you use nothing. So we got exact match. These ratings are matching now exactly the way it is, the way we wanted. And over here that we see, all these ratings are matched exactly. So we have these rate tables and these ratings here. Again, the formula would remain the same. Again, we have used the entire range here, A to B. I can go and give this table a name. How about this one? And I can give a rate table and I press enter. Now, instead of all these values here in this function, I can simply use VLOOKUP. Lookup value is this rating, where in the rate table, comma, which column has my answer? Number 2. And I want an exact answer. So I put a comma, press enter, I'll get an answer. So this time I've used this range only as a VLOOKUP function. So we get an answer here as an exact match. We now see how we used the approximate match. We saw how we used the exact match. Over here, we have not used anything. If we want, we can use 1 for approximate. Again, it would remain, doesn't make any difference. Or you can use true, which is also approximate, right? and this will work. Okay, so let's move on to the large table VLOOKUP, the next chapter here. Now we have these Aadhaar numbers here. We have these employee names, their compensation, their department, their dependents. We have some of the employees, their manufacturing department, the Aadhaar numbers, the hire date, and the years they've been working over here. Now there's a formula which have been used, which we will cover later, not now. But based on both these lists, we want to calculate we want to take out the compensation. Now we have both these lists here. Now these two lists are on the same sheet right now, but doesn't has to be. It can be on a different sheet. It can be on a different Excel file as well. Now these files can be anywhere. We are now comparing one sheet with another sheet and taking out the data, extracting some data based on the common item. What is the common item in both these sheets? Aadhaar number. So we will match Aadhaar number in one sheet to the Aadhaar number in another sheet, and we will take out the compensation from the other sheet. So how we are going to do that? Of course, we have these common item is Aadhaar number. I'll simply put a color over here to identify that these are two different files, two different sheets. So I'm going to put the VLOOKUP function here. So equal VLOOKUP. And what is the value that I want to look up? The Aadhaar number. Of course, we will match Aadhaar number to Aadhaar number and take out the compensation. Comma, table array. Table array will be this, the other sheet table array. Now you can select up to salary up where you want, or you can select more columns. Your answer will depend on which column reference index number you have given. Comma, which column index number has my answer? 1, 2, 3, 4. My answer is in number 3. So I put number 3. And I want an exact match or an approximate match? Of course, I want an exact match over here. So I put a comma. And now I press enter. I'm not getting anything. So, but I put the correct formula here. How about the others one? Maybe this Aadhaar number is not there in the list. So I can copy this down, but I'm not getting answer anywhere at all. There is something wrong. Formula is correct, but answer is not coming. Let's check again. Now what is happening here is we use the correct formula. Some of you might think, okay, I used extra column. That is why. No, it doesn't matter because my formula will take out the value from the column number that I put in. So maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 4. Somebody says remove a comma or put a 0 or exact match. There is nothing wrong with the formula. Let's take out the other ways. So sometimes your formulas are correct but you may not get an answer because this sheet might not have been prepared by you. So you don't know what is happening here. So and first thing you need to trust your formulas. Maybe they are working fine, they are fine, but you need to understand that there could be other reasons for not getting an answer. Over here, let's check out the Aadhaar numbers here. So do we have this Aadhaar number in this list? It says 7890-0468-3274. And to check the authenticity of the number, always look for the number in the formula bar. It says 7890-0468-3274. Okay. How about here? It says 96300-760-3619. There is no dash, but I see a dash here. Yes, you see a dash because it is formatted as a dash. But if you click here, there is no dash. However, if you click here, there is a physical dash. There is a physical dash. Over here, there is no physical dash. So maybe this is the reason you're not getting an answer. So what we need to do is we need to remove dashes from column G. So in order to do that, we simply select the column G and Control H, find and select over here and replace. Replace what? First, find what? Find dash. Replace with nothing. Replace all. Boom, you'll get an answer. You'll immediately start to get an answer. And some of you might say these formats is different now. Of course, we can copy the format. That doesn't matter. So the format is now correct. So we got all these compensation here. Remember, you can your formula trust your formulas. Your formulas are correct. So we have now matched these Aadhaar numbers with those the other Aadhaar numbers here. Aadhaar number to Aadhaar number. Remember, if you're not getting an answer, make sure you check if the formatting is not incorrect. Formatting plays a very important role in getting the formulas to work. So make sure your formulas are up to date and there is no formatting issue in your formulas. So over here we have now covered both these VLOOKUPs, the approximate match and the exact match. Let's take a look at the another lookup function for today called choose. Now, choose function is a very important function. Now, it helps you to choose some different values here. And it's a relatively new function here. Now, unlike other functions, other lookup functions, choose function do not require an external data or a table. Like if we take a look at these VLOOKUPs or the other lookup function, you need to refer or take the data from a different lookup, different sheet or an external data. That can be on the same sheet, that can be on a different sheet, that can be on a different file. It can be anywhere. But for the choose function to work, you don't need to refer to an external data. You can use the same data on the same sheet. You build those lists in the function itself. Now let me zoom in a bit. We got some dates here and we want to convert them to the different quarter. And I've used a round function here to convert these months into quarters. Now, not an easy function to go with or not quite difficult function to understand, but to get an answer for something like this, you might tend to work a little hard to understand. Not easy to understand or easy the function to work with. So the purpose here of the choose function is uh, it provides a better and easy documentation, easier to read. Over here, we are getting the answer. We're converting those dates into the quarter, their respective quarters. But choose function could have worked much better in this case. So it's based on a simple idea. We got a value somewhere and we want to convert it into some other value. So changing one value to another value. So this is how this choose function is actually working. Now, ultimately, uh, it will be much easier to use the choose function. Now let's see that in action here. So I'm going to put in here, we want to take out the month from these dates. So let's understand first we take out the month from these dates. A month can be only 12 months here. So first I'll use the function here called month from which date? This date. And it has given me 12. So 12 possibilities, December is 12. And if I copy this down, of course, let me collapse this. And every month has a number. And the possibilities are only 1 to 12. So first 12, then 5, then 7, then 11, 6, depending on what month it is. Right. Now we have all these months here and we want to convert these months into quarters. Now we will be providing several different answers here from 1 or 12, 1 to 12. So we will be using a choose function along with the month function. So choose, now it says here, choose a value or action to perform from a list of values based on index number. Now index number will be what? Index number will be our month. So choose what? Index number. Index number will be whatever the month is. The month is number 12. Where do we get the index number? From the value of the month. So if the value So whatever the value is, if the value is 1, I get 1, 2, 1, 1 for January, February, March, April, May, June, 2, then 3, then 4, and then you close the bracket and press enter, you get the answer. And you will get the same answers here. But which one is easier to read? Of course, choose function is easier to read. And what if you say that, oh, this is okay, but my fiscal year starts in April. My April is my first quarter, April AMG. Don't worry, if April, May, June is your first quarter, which means that OND or December, January or OND will be your fourth quarter. So I'm gonna put in for January will be fourth quarter, January, February, March. And I'm gonna remove these last fours from here, press enter. Now AMJ will be our first quarter, April, May, June. So wherever you see April, May, June, that will be your first quarter. So we have converted those months into different quarters. So little tricky here. Choose function. I think you can you see the possibility of using a choose function here. How you see how choose functions operate here. Now the problem you will face is when you're trying to deal with a larger list and trying to make this work. Whatever the value is you want to, whatever your index number is, let's say your index number is 1 to 12, okay, makes sense. But if your index number is 10,000, which means you have to give 10,000 values or 300 values. So of course, whatever the value your index number you want to use, it has to be a lower value to make it work more efficiently. But it's a better function rather than using the this round function. We will cover that in mathematic functions. But choose function has its limitation, and yet at the same time, I think in here a better alternative than this round function is the choose function. So choose function is much better in this case. But does it work in every case? No, it will not work in all the cases. Like I said, it has to be a lower value wherever you're using it, right? And if I'm going to make it wider and expand it, so you can see this, see how this function is used. Choose, first we take out the month from this date and then we use that month. Let's say that month value was 10, that will be our index number. So that index number is then converting into different values, whatever the index number is. So we are converting one value to another value. So this is how the choose function is actually used. And this is how we use the choose function. This is over here, we use the VLOOKUP function and VLOOKUP approximate or exact match, or the HLOOKUP function, same. So choose function, and over here you have the round function. You can see both these functions will get you the same answer. All right, so we will be doing other lookup functions like switch, match, index match, nested ifs, a nested index match, and XLOOKUP when we return next week. So thank you very much for joining in today for this session here. We will be I'll be conducting more sessions every Sunday 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Join in for these sessions and gain knowledge. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye bye.